let's find out what health and safety means for you. Hello and welcome to Debenhams. We hope the time that you spend with us is both fun and rewarding. It's important to note that this digital learning solution is brought to you as one of a number of training units that will complement your health and safety journey with us going forward. Here at Debenhams, we know that it's our responsibility to ensure that your health and safety is protected at all times, and we'll strive to achieve this. To be successful, it's important to remember that this is a shared obligation and that you, as colleagues, have a part to play too. We'll learn more about this going forward. With thousands of colleagues and customers passing through our stores every day, health and safety issues are of vital importance. With this in mind, we're supported by an Executive Health and Safety Committee, which meets regularly to review health and safety information shared by our sites. The committee also helps to develop and implement new safety procedures to ensure we're constantly evolving along with our environment. We've created this digital learning solution so you can understand how health and safety fits into your everyday environment and what good health and safety practice looks like for you. There are specific safety considerations associated with varying job roles around the store, and your line manager will take you through the appropriate risk assessments relevant to yours. However, there are some general considerations of which we all need to be aware. You can find out more about these in further topics. Okay, you should now have a high-level overview of what health and safety means for you.
Let's find out what equipment procedures will affect you and how. At Debenhams, you'll need to use a range of different types of equipment. This could be anything from simple hand tools, manual handling equipment and ladders, to potentially more hazardous items such as compactors, waste disposal equipment and more. A piece of work equipment is any tool or machine used by a colleague during the course of their work. It includes anything from a screwdriver to a more complex machine such as lifting equipment. You should always inspect any work equipment before use and make sure it's used for its intended purpose. For example, use a mallet to secure a back wall bar rather than another bar. Never use anything that shows any obvious signs of damage or excessive wear and tear. Certain pieces of equipment are designated for use by trained and authorised persons only, so make sure you have the relevant permissions prior to use. Users of work equipment should follow the guidance provided at all times, including the wearing of protective clothing or equipment such as goggles or gloves.
Let's find out what you'll be handling and how to do so safely. Moving items around the building is part of all of our working lives, so it's vital to learn how to assess the risks associated with lifting and carrying items. It is important that manual handling tasks are thought through and planned before the work commences. To help with this, there are 4 key things to consider before using any equipment to aid manual handling. The task. Does it involve bending, twisting, pushing or pulling? Is the task to be done sitting, standing or moving? Is it repetitive? Will breaks be required? The individual. Could you be more vulnerable to a manual handling injury because you are suffering from an existing health problem or you may be pregnant? If so, speak to your line manager. The load. Is the item heavy, difficult to grip? Does it have an unbalanced centre of gravity? Is the content fragile, hot, cold, likely to move? A good way to test the heaviness of an object is to nudge it with your foot if possible. It's also important to look for any markings that indicate the number of people required to lift it, or the weight in kilograms. The environment. Are the working conditions hot, cold or humid? Does the handling involve a change in floor level, or could the floor be slippery? Are there space constraints, doors to negotiate or other people to take into account? So, what equipment are you likely to be using to move items around the store? Firstly, let's look at totes. Tote boxes are reusable containers and are particularly useful for transporting smaller quantities or loose items. They should be stacked no more than 4 high and should be moved on wheels known as dollies. Care should be taken to ensure stacks are stable, not too high that they obstruct line of sight, and not so heavy that they require significant effort to move. Please note that you should always check that totes are dry and clean, and make sure any broken items are taken out of use and reported to your line manager or supervisor. Dollies are used to transport totes around the store. They have brakes, so be sure to use them when you are loading, otherwise the dolly might move away from you and accidents could occur. You may need to push or pull the dolly depending on your route. To do so, you should use the sides of the stacked totes to grip and steer. Dollies should be inspected regularly to ensure that the wheels are moving freely and that the brakes are working. Remember, longer handles are available to attach to the dolly to ensure that the best posture is adopted and that minimum strain is put on your back. Running rails are used to transport hanging fashion garments. When moving a rail, always try to have one hand on the top rail to steady it and the other on the front end bar to push and steer. Rails that have been overloaded or loaded incorrectly may be unstable. When moving a rail in a restricted area, take care to avoid fixtures, furniture, and of course, any people in the vicinity. Roll cages are used to transport larger items and those not suitable for totes or running rails. They have folding shelves which combine to allow different loads to be carried. You should always put the heaviest item at the bottom of the cage as it will be easier to maneuver and keep the load stable. Again, you may need to push or pull a cage depending on your route, but either way you should do so with safety in mind. Always hold the cage by the sidebar just below shoulder level and with the smallest steering wheel closest to you. Remove any material that blocks your view, and if it feels too heavy, reduce the load. Cages can be awkward to maneuver, so watch out for your knuckles scraping along the walls when going down narrow passageways or negotiating doors. And of course, watch out for your feet and those of fellow workers and customers. Remember, where there is a brake, use it when the cages come to a stop, and always when loading and unloading. When moving cages, be aware of low ceilings that may have sprinklers or lights to be avoided. Care should be taken when assembling and disassembling a roll cage, so make sure you have been trained before you attempt to do this on your own. Sometimes, large items such as visual equipment, large box stock are delivered on pallets. Pallets are not usually taken out onto the sales floor because stock on them is often decanted into cages or totes. Pallets should only be moved by staff trained to use a pallet truck. No matter what equipment you use, there are some key points to remember that apply across the board. Never block access to any firefighting or fire detection equipment, or any routes to fire exits, even for a short time. Never leave equipment unattended where it may present a trip hazard. Always check the equipment before you use it, and if you notice it is damaged or defective, don't use it. Instead, report it to your line manager or supervisor so it can be taken out of circulation.
Let's find out what to consider when working at height. Working at height means working in any place where if precautions are not taken, a fall of persons or material could result in injury to yourself or others. The best way to avoid such risks is to arrange the task or workplace so that the need of working at height is avoided. For example, this could be achieved by storing items on lower shelves. However, there may be times when you are required to work at height, whether it is to carry out a task or simply to store or retrieve something. In the majority of cases, the most frequently used access equipment types are footstools and step ladders, but in some cases, more specialist equipment may be used by designated authorised personnel. Never use chairs, shelving or overturned boxes to climb. Here are some tips for the safe use of access equipment. Always check the condition of equipment before use. If there are signs of damage or wear and tear, stop and report it to your line manager. Make sure the equipment is on a level ground before use. Always use the locking mechanism if there is one. Get a colleague to help if necessary. Where possible, face front, take one step at a time and don't twist. Try to use both hands when climbing or maintain 3 points of contact. Never stand on the top step of the step ladder. Never overreach to the left or right. It's safer to move the ladder. Always consider the protection of others at ground level in the vicinity of where you are working. And always wear suitable footwear.
let's look at what you can do to stay safe at work. Regardless of where you work, you should always be aware of the environment and any situations that may create further hazards for you or others. All areas should be kept clean and tidy, and fixtures and fittings such as displays, sound floor fixtures, furniture, etc. should be maintained in good condition and positioned safely. It's common sense really. Accidents do happen, but with a little vigilance they can be avoided. If you happen to see something that needs attention, note it in the health and safety logbook, which is checked daily. However, if the hazard is serious, take immediate appropriate action to prevent others being injured. Remember, a hazard is an accident waiting to happen, so act quickly and don't wait for someone else to report it. As well as fixtures and fittings and poor housekeeping standards, there are other potential hazards that may cause slips, trips and falls in the working environment. These are things such as wires, spillages and signage. Let's find out more. You should always ensure that there are no trailing leads or wires when working with any electrical equipment, to avoid trip hazards and other accidents. Any spillages must be dealt with immediately, first by preventing others from accessing the affected area, and then arranging for the spillage to be cleaned. Wet floor warning signs will help to highlight the hazard, but they must not be relied upon as the only action taken in the event of a spillage. Remember, we should all play our part in keeping our environment free from litter and other slip or trip hazards, and report any defects we see such as broken floor tiles or a damaged step on a flight of stairs. Escalators are an important means of customers moving between floors in our stores. However, they can represent a hazard if not used in an appropriate manner, so there are some general rules to be aware of when in the vicinity of them. Be vigilant for vulnerable customers like the elderly, those with small children or heavy shopping, in case they need help. As a general note, if there are any customers trying to use the escalators with prams, pushchairs or large shopping trolleys, you should politely recommend they use the lift, as this is a much safer option when taking into account vulnerability. You should not use the escalators to carry large or heavy items such as fixtures, fittings or stock. Instead, use the lift or stairs. Please remember that children should not be allowed to play on or around the escalators, so if you spot anything concerning, please address the children and all their parents in a calm and collected manner, asking them to stop. If you notice an emergency on an escalator and need to stop it, there is an emergency stop button, usually located at the top and bottom of the machine.
Let's find out what happens if an emergency occurs. We know it's common sense, but it's surprising how many times really simple things can cause a fire or be a real danger in the event of one. Here are some examples of the things that can create or add to fire hazards that should be avoided in store. Don't block fire doors or exit routes. Keep all firefighting equipment in its designated location and ensure it is never obstructed. Switch off non-essential equipment when not in use, such as steam irons and laminators. Check that sockets are in good condition and don't overload them. Ensure ventilation grills are kept clear to prevent equipment overheating. Ensure flammable chemicals are stored safely and kept away from heat sources. And remember that smoking is never allowed on Debenhams premises. For a fire to start, 3 things are required: a source of ignition, a source of fuel, and an oxygen supply. Preventing these 3 things coming together is therefore key to minimising the risk of fire in and around the building. Let's look at them in some more detail. Sources of ignition can include things such as faulty and misused electrical equipment, overloaded sockets, fixed or portable electrical heaters, hot surfaces and obstruction of equipment ventilation, lighting equipment which can provide heat source to items stored too close to the lamp, smokers' materials, e.g. cigarettes, lighters and matches. Anything that burns could be fuel for a fire, but you need to be especially aware of things such as adhesives, packaging materials, and flammable liquids such as certain types of cleaning solvents. Realistically, it's not possible to control the supply of oxygen in a building. However, remember that keeping fire doors shut is the closest thing we have to controlling oxygen supplies, as they work to minimise the flow of air and prevent fires from spreading. With that in mind, you should be vigilant for any of the aforementioned hazards. If you see something that concerns you, don't wait for someone else to do something, take action. If there's ever immediate danger, it requires immediate action. Report it to your line or duty manager straight away. It is extremely important that you are fully aware of the actions to take in an emergency, and in particular, those for evacuating the store. Below is some guidance on the measures you can take to keep yourself, your colleagues, and our customers safe in an emergency. When you get to your department, you should familiarise yourself with your nearest fire exit, break glass points, and fire equipment. Also, keep a lookout for the rest of the store. You never know where you might be in the event of an emergency. If you discover smoke or a fire, act quickly and break the nearest break glass alarm. You'll normally find these adjacent to the fire door exits. Once the glass is broken, even an intermittent or continuous alarm will sound. After you have raised the alarm, be aware of anybody around you and encourage them to follow you to the nearest exit and leave the area immediately. If there does come a time when using an extinguisher is necessary, you should know that there's a whole range of extinguishers for different types of fire. Be aware that using the wrong extinguisher or using it incorrectly could make the situation a whole lot worse. We would not expect you to use an extinguisher unless you have been trained to do so. If you hear an intermittent alarm, this means that a potential incident has been identified in the premises and is being investigated. However, at this stage, an immediate evacuation is not yet confirmed. When you hear an intermittent alarm, you should check the break glass point near you to see if it has been broken accidentally. If you find the glass has been accidentally smashed, contact the duty manager immediately so that the alarm can be silenced before it goes into full evacuation mode. You should also advise any customers in the fitting rooms that they should prepare to leave in the case of an evacuation. The same goes for any customers in the public restaurants and any visitors or contractors. Everybody should be ready to leave behind anything non-essential and evacuate the store. You should also identify any individuals on your department who may need assistance in the event of an evacuation. For example, look out for parents with children in pushchairs, the elderly or disabled, and so on. If it is a false alarm, the intermittent sound or alert message of the alarm will stop. If not, the alarm will go into a continuous alarm and therefore full evacuation mode. If the continuous alarm sounds immediately or the intermittent alarm changes to the continuous alarm, you should begin to evacuate at once, encouraging all those around you to do the same. Do not return to workstations or go to locker rooms to collect personal belongings, and do not use any passenger lifts. Use only the escape exits and fire staircases provided. You should allow able-bodied customers and visitors to evacuate first. Temporary refuges are provided on selected staircases to accommodate people with disabilities who require additional assistance to evacuate. It's important to note that your department may have responsibilities for checking designated areas, such as lifts, offices, toilets, and dressing rooms, to ensure they are clear. Where it is safe to do so, the first member of staff to leave through the exit door should remain there until the designated door warden arrives, ensuring nobody tries to enter or re-enter the store. Once you have left the building, you must report to your manager at the designated assembly point. Then, remain outside the building until a member of management tells you it is safe to go back in. Although very rare, should a bomb threat be received, it must be taken seriously. If a threat has been received by one of our sites or in the local area, the duty manager will be informed and a decision will be made to either carry out a search or evacuate the building. If you hear the tannoy message, "Will sales managers please report to their supervisors?" you must take the following action. Return to your department and carry out a visual search under the supervision of the most senior person in that department. If you do find anything suspicious, don't touch it. Report it to your manager immediately and keep others away from the area. Remember, it's better to be safe than sorry, so don't be embarrassed about raising concern. If your search reveals nothing suspicious, inform your manager that the area is clear. When the whole building has been searched and deemed safe, you will hear this tannoy. Will sales managers return to their departments? If the decision is taken to evacuate the building, the full alarm will be activated and you should evacuate in the normal way. This procedure will be practiced at certain points throughout the year, but please ask your line manager if you have any questions. If an emergency or incident does take place, let's take a look at what to do if someone gets injured. 1. Call the duty manager or your building's emergency number. 2. Tell them which floor you are on. 3. Ask for first aid assistance. 4. Explain the number of people who are injured. 5. Explain the nature of the injury. And 6. Inform them of your exact location and tell them how you can be contacted. After you've informed them of this information, turn your attention back to the injured party and comfort them until help arrives. Incidentally, if you are interested in becoming a first aider, please speak to your line manager. By following a few simple rules, you can make your work environment a secure and safe place. Keep your eyes open and get to know the items in your work area. If you notice anything suspicious, report it to loss prevention or your line manager. Be wary of others slipping through access-controlled areas behind you or people in back-of-house areas you don't recognise, and don't be embarrassed about asking for identification. We want you to be safe at all times, whether at work, on holiday or at home, and we have a handout to give you at the end of this session with some useful information you can share with your friends and family.
Let's wrap up with some final facts and contacts that will aid your health and safety experience with Debenhams. We have an ongoing commitment to health and safety in store, and will keep you informed of any new developments. Your line manager will take you through any risk assessments and detailed training on equipment that you may need to carry out your role. Don't forget, speak to your line manager for further information and emergency contact numbers. All that remains to say is, of course, work hard, have fun, and make Debenhams a safe place for yourself, your customers, and your colleagues. Well done, you've completed your health and safety training for Debenhams. We wish you all the best and hope that you enjoy your time with us.